Hello friends. My name is Nickel, and today I'm going to tell you a story which will make you think. So let's start. The city of Pune in the 1970s was known for its peaceful colleges, cultural atmosphere, and disciplined lifestyle. Students from different parts of Maharashtra came there with dreams of becoming artists, engineers, and successful professionals. Among the thousands of students studying in Pune, 4 young men appeared completely normal from the outside. Rajendra Jakkal, Dilip Sutar, Shantaram Kanitkar, Munawar Shah. All 4 studied at Abhinav Kala Mahavidyalaya, one of the city's respected art colleges. They mixed easily with other students, attended classes, laughed with friends, and spent time in cafes around the city. Nobody imagined that behind their calm faces, a horrifying criminal mindset was slowly growing. The 4 young men became close friends because they shared similar habits and ambitions. They loved expensive liquor, imported cigarettes, stylish clothes, and the thrill of living beyond their means. At first, it looked harmless. Like many college students, they wanted excitement, freedom, and attention. But slowly, their desires turned into obsession. Their families could not provide the luxurious lifestyle they wanted. Pocket money was limited, and small part-time jobs were not enough for their growing addictions. Instead of working harder, they started discussing shortcuts, easy money, fast money, money without consequences. Late at night, inside hostel rooms and deserted college corners, their conversations became darker. What started as jokes about robbery turned into serious planning. They convinced themselves that rich people could easily be targeted, and once that thought entered their minds, there was no turning back. Their first victim was someone they trusted completely, Prakash Hegde. Prakash came from a financially strong family. He was friendly, innocent, and knew the group personally. Because of that, he never suspected danger around them. The gang carefully studied his routine. They knew where he went, who he met, when he stayed alone. One evening, they lured him into a trap using friendship as bait. Prakash believed he was simply meeting friends. He had no idea he was walking towards his death. The group abducted him quietly and took him to a hidden location. At first, the plan was simple: demand ransom money from his family and release him afterward. But crimes rarely go according to plan. After kidnapping Prakash, panic slowly began spreading among the 4 men. They realized something terrifying. Prakash knew all of them personally. If he survived, he could identify every single person involved. That fear changed the situation completely. Inside the room where Prakash was held captive, tension kept increasing. Arguments broke out among the kidnappers. Some wanted to take the money and disappear. Others believed leaving Prakash alive was too risky. The atmosphere became suffocating. Prakash reportedly begged them to let him go. He reminded them that they were friends. He promised he wouldn't complain to the police. But greed and fear had already destroyed whatever humanity remained inside them. The 4 young men made a horrifying decision. They would eliminate the only witness. The murder was brutal and cold-blooded. The gang killed Prakash before the ransom plan could even succeed. Afterward, they needed to hide the evidence quickly. To make sure the body would never surface, they tied heavy stones to the corpse and transported it to a lake on the outskirts of Pune during the darkness of night. The roads were silent. The city slept peacefully. And while ordinary citizens remained unaware, 4 college students were carrying out one of the most chilling crimes Pune had ever seen. They dumped the body into the deep water and watched it disappear beneath the surface. For a few moments, nobody spoke. Then they left the area as if nothing had happened.
When Prakash suddenly disappeared, confusion spread among his family and friends. Missing person reports were filed. People assumed he had gone somewhere unexpectedly or had personal problems. At that stage, police did not suspect murder. There was no body, no witnesses, no clear evidence. The killers believed they had committed the perfect crime. And the most dangerous part was this. Instead of feeling guilt, they felt confidence. The successful cover-up gave them courage. They realized that kidnapping and murder could bring quick money and excitement. That realization would soon push them towards even more horrifying crimes. And Pune was about to witness a nightmare that nobody could have imagined.
After the murder of Prakash Hegde, the four young men expected fear and guilt to consume them. But the opposite happened. Weeks passed, then months. No arrests were made. No serious suspicion reached them. Police still treated the case like a disappearance. That false sense of safety changed everything. The success of their first crime gave the gang dangerous confidence. They no longer saw themselves as ordinary students struggling for money. In their minds, they had become smarter than the police. And slowly, robbery was no longer enough. Violence had become easier. Killing had become easier. Their next target was Ayut Joshi. Unlike their first kidnapping, this crime was more direct and more ruthless. By now, the gang had become organized. They carefully selected victims who appeared financially stable and vulnerable. Ayut trusted them enough to lower his guard. That trust cost him his life. The gang attacked him during a robbery attempt. At first, the motive was theft, but just like before, fear of identification turned the situation deadly. They believed that anyone who saw their faces could become a threat, so they chose murder again. Ayut Joshi was killed brutally. This time, the gang did not panic afterward. That was the most terrifying part. The hesitation they may have once felt had disappeared completely. The line between robbery and murder no longer existed for them. By 1976, Rajendra Jakkal, Dilip Sutar, Shantaram Kanitkar, and Munawar Shah were no longer petty criminals. They had become serial killers. Pune was once considered one of Maharashtra's safest cities. Families slept peacefully with doors unlocked. Neighbors trusted one another. But strange rumors slowly began spreading across the city. People whispered about missing persons, unexpected murders, violent robberies. Fear quietly entered middle-class neighborhoods. Parents warned children not to stay out late. Residents became suspicious of strangers. Wealthy families started locking doors earlier than usual. But nobody yet understood that a single gang was responsible for the growing terror. The killers were still moving freely through the city, blending in like normal college students during the daytime. In October 1976, the gang decided to attempt something far bigger than before. They wanted more money, more valuables, more control. That was when their attention turned towards the Joshi family. The house appeared financially secure, and the gang believed the robbery could bring them huge rewards. After watching the family's routine and movements, they prepared for another home invasion. One night, they entered the house and took the family hostage. Inside the home, terror unfolded within minutes. The family members were threatened and overpowered before they could properly react. The gang searched the house for jewelry, cash, and expensive items while keeping everyone under fear. But robbery alone was never enough for them anymore. Just like in earlier crimes, they feared being identified later. And once again, they chose murder. 3 members of the Joshi family were killed mercilessly inside their own home. The gang then collected valuables and jewelry before escaping into the darkness. What shocked investigators later was the calmness with which the gang disappeared. There were no dramatic mistakes, no immediate clues. It was as if the murderers had vanished into thin air. The news spread rapidly through Pune. Families were horrified. Newspapers carried disturbing reports about violent killings happening inside ordinary homes. Residents started discussing the crimes everywhere, in markets, buses, tea stalls, and college campuses. People began sleeping with lights on. Every knock at the door after dark created anxiety. The city that once felt peaceful now felt hunted. Police pressure increased heavily, but investigators still struggled to connect all the murders together. Different crimes appeared unrelated on the surface. Meanwhile, the gang became even more fearless. Each successful escape made them believe they were untouchable. That dangerous confidence soon led to their most horrifying crime of all. The gang's final and most infamous attack targeted the home of renowned Sanskrit scholar Kashinath Joshi-Abhyankar. Shastriji was around 80 years old and highly respected for his knowledge and scholarly work. His home represented education, tradition, and peace, the last place anyone imagined such brutality could occur. But on that terrible night, the killers entered the house with robbery in mind. What followed shocked the entire nation. The gang showed absolutely no mercy. Inside the Abhyankar home, 5 people were murdered. Kashinath Joshi-Abhyankar, his wife, his grandson, the family maid, and another household member. Even the old age of the scholar did not soften the attackers. The murders were savage, emotionless, and terrifyingly calculated. By the time the killers left the house, Pune had witnessed one of the darkest crimes in its history. The city was no longer dealing with simple robbers. It was facing a group of cold-blooded serial killers who seemed capable of murdering anyone for money and self-protection. And now, the police had no choice but to launch a massive hunt before more innocent people died.
By the end of 1976, fear had completely taken over Pune. The murders were no longer being seen as ordinary crimes. People believed something evil was moving through the city at night. Doors were locked before sunset. Parents stopped children from going outside alone. Even small sounds in quiet neighborhoods created panic. And the most horrifying part was this: the killers showed absolutely no mercy. The gang had now crossed every possible moral boundary. Men, women, elderly people, even children were not spared. Investigators later discovered chilling details about their behavior after the murders. According to reports and witness accounts connected to the investigation, the gang often behaved with shocking calmness after killing their victims. Sometimes they sat inside the same houses after the murders. Sometimes they ate snacks or drank alcohol nearby before leaving. The complete absence of fear or remorse terrified the police. These were not criminals acting in panic anymore. They were becoming emotionally numb to violence. Every successful robbery and murder made them bolder. As news spread from one neighborhood to another, Pune became flooded with rumors. People whispered about a shaitani gang, a satanic group roaming through the city after dark. Some believed black magic was involved. Others thought professional contract killers had entered Pune from another state. Nobody imagined that the murderers were actually educated college students living ordinary lives during the daytime. That contrast made the case even more disturbing. The killers attended classes, interacted with friends, and walked through crowded streets like normal citizens. At night, they turned into predators. After a series of killings connected to robberies, the death toll kept rising. Soon, nearly 10 murders had shocked the city. Public anger exploded. Newspapers criticized the police daily. Citizens demanded immediate arrests. Fear was damaging Pune's image as a peaceful, educational city. Pressure on Pune police and the Maharashtra CID increased massively. Senior officers were called into emergency meetings again and again. Special teams were formed. Investigators worked night and day trying to connect the crimes. But the case remained extremely confusing.
There were very few witnesses, very little forensic evidence, and no clear motive beyond robbery. The biggest challenge was that the killers had no major criminal background. Police normally searched known criminals first: burglars, gang members, violent offenders, and repeat robbers. But this time, none of the usual suspects matched the crimes. The real killers were completely outside police expectations. Investigators questioned hundreds of people connected to Pune's criminal world. Local thieves were detained, known gang members were interrogated, informers were activated across the city. Police raided hideouts and checked records repeatedly. Still, nothing useful emerged. Weeks passed without major progress. Meanwhile, the killers started making a dangerous mistake. Success had filled them with arrogance. After escaping capture multiple times, Rajendra Jakkal and his companions began believing they were untouchable. Their behavior slowly changed. They suddenly had expensive clothes, money to spend freely, alcohol, cigarettes, and access to costly items that ordinary students could not easily afford. Friends and acquaintances started noticing the difference. How are they spending so much money? Where are these valuables coming from? The gang enjoyed the attention. Instead of staying silent, they began bragging indirectly about stolen goods and expensive possessions. They hinted that they had ways of making quick money. That arrogance became the first crack in their carefully hidden world. Among the people who knew the group, one acquaintance became suspicious. The stories didn't make sense. The sudden wealth, the nervous behavior, the unexplained valuables. Something felt deeply wrong. Eventually, suspicion became too strong to ignore. The individual secretly approached the police and shared information about the group. For investigators who had spent months chasing shadows, this was the first meaningful lead. Police immediately started quietly monitoring Rajendra Jakkal and his associates. Officers observed their movements carefully, and what they saw raised even more suspicion. The young men who once lived like ordinary students were now spending money far beyond their known income. Their lifestyle had changed suddenly and dramatically. To experienced investigators, this was a major warning sign. The police finally felt they were getting close to the truth, but they still had no idea just how horrifying that truth would be once the gang finally broke under interrogation.
By late 1976, the investigation had finally begun moving in the right direction. For months, Pune police had been chasing invisible killers. The city was terrified, political pressure was increasing, and newspapers questioned whether the police were capable of stopping the murders. Now investigators had suspects under surveillance: Rajendra Jakkal, Dilip Sutar, Shantaram Kanitkar, Munawar Shah. At first glance, they still looked harmless, educated college students from respectable backgrounds. But police officers had started noticing disturbing patterns: unexplained money, sudden luxury spending, suspicious movements, and behavior that no longer matched ordinary student life. The police decided it was time to act. The 4 suspects were picked up separately from different locations to prevent them from coordinating stories or warning each other. Officers moved carefully and quietly. Some were detained from their homes. Others were intercepted before they understood what was happening. The police avoided public drama because they still lacked complete evidence. During the initial questioning, all 4 denied involvement. They acted calm, confident, almost arrogant. They claimed they were innocent students being harassed unfairly. Some even tried misleading investigators by giving false explanations about their money and activities. For a short time, they attempted to maintain the image of educated young men trapped in a misunderstanding. But investigators had already begun connecting crucial evidence.
And once intensive interrogation started, cracks slowly appeared in their stories. Separated from one another and questioned repeatedly, the gang members started breaking mentally. One contradiction led to another. Small lies collapsed under detailed questioning. Eventually, the confessions began. And what the police heard shocked even experienced officers. The accused calmly described kidnappings, robberies, and murders that had terrorized Pune for months. Investigators later admitted that some details were so disturbing that officers themselves struggled to remain emotionally unaffected during interrogation sessions. The gang explained how victims were selected, how homes were targeted, how fear of identification led to repeated murders. But some of the details were even darker. During interrogation, the accused reportedly revealed how they transported and disposed of bodies after the killings. To avoid suspicion, they used ordinary objects that attracted little attention on Pune's streets. Iron drums, bicycles, basic household items. The simplicity of their methods terrified investigators because it showed careful planning rather than impulsive violence. The killers had blended brutality with routine everyday life. While ordinary citizens rode bicycles to work or college, this gang had allegedly used similar methods to move evidence connected to murder. The realization horrified the public once details reached newspapers. As news of the arrests spread, Pune exploded with anger. Crowds gathered outside police stations and court buildings. Citizens who had spent months living in fear now wanted the harshest punishment possible. People shouted slogans demanding death sentences. Newspapers covered every courtroom appearance in detail. The case quickly became one of India's most discussed criminal trials of that era. For many citizens, the most shocking fact was the age and background of the accused. These were not hardened underworld gangsters. They were educated young men. That reality created national debate about morality, violence, and the psychological darkness hidden behind normal appearances. During legal proceedings, some lawyers and commentators described the gang as a cancer on society, arguing that their crimes showed extreme cruelty without remorse. During searches connected to the investigation, police discovered one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence linked to Rajendra Jakkal, a personal diary. At first, officers expected ordinary notes or college writings. Instead, they reportedly found material connected to criminal thoughts and future plans. The diary suggested that Jakkal saw himself as far more than a thief or robber. He imagined himself as an extraordinary criminal mind, someone above normal society. According to investigators, the writings reflected arrogance, emotional detachment, and fantasies about future crimes. Some entries allegedly included ideas connected to planned killings that had not yet happened. For police, this discovery was deeply alarming. It suggested the violence might have continued if the gang had not been arrested in time. Even after the arrests, fear did not disappear immediately from Pune. Families still remembered the horrifying murders. Survivors struggled emotionally. Parents became more protective of their children. The city had changed forever. People who once trusted easily had become cautious. And at the center of that nightmare stood 4 young men whose greed, arrogance, and hunger for thrill had transformed them into some of the most feared serial killers in Indian criminal history. But the final chapter of the case, the trial, the verdict, and the fate of the accused, was still yet to come.
By the time the investigation was complete, Pune had already witnessed one of the darkest chapters in its history. The confessions, the recovered evidence, the stolen valuables, and the horrifying details of the murders had shaken the entire country. Now, all eyes were on the courtroom.
People wanted justice, and the nation waited to see what punishment would be given to 4 educated young men who had turned into ruthless serial killers. The Joshi-Abhyankar murder case quickly became one of India's most talked-about criminal trials. Courtrooms remained crowded, journalists covered every hearing, citizens discussed the case in homes, buses, tea stalls, and college campuses. The prosecution presented the gang as cold-blooded killers driven by greed and thrill. Investigators described how the group carefully selected victims, committed robberies, and murdered innocent people to avoid identification. The court heard disturbing details about the kidnapping of Prakash Hegde, the murder of Achut Joshi, the killings inside the Joshi household, the massacre at the Abhyankar residence. Witness statements, stolen property, confessions, and recovered evidence built a powerful case against the accused. Meanwhile, defense lawyers attempted to argue for leniency by pointing to the young age and educational background of the accused. But public sympathy was almost non-existent. The brutality of the crimes had shocked the nation too deeply. In 1978, the Pune court delivered its historic judgment. Rajendra Jakkal, Dilip Sutar, Shantaram Kanitkar, and Munawar Shah were all sentenced to death. The courtroom atmosphere reportedly became tense and emotional as the verdict was announced. For many citizens, the judgment felt like justice for the innocent families destroyed by the gang. But the legal battle did not end there. After receiving the death sentence, the 4 convicts tried every possible legal option to save themselves. Appeals were filed in higher courts. The case moved through the legal system. Requests for mercy were also submitted. The convicts hoped their youth and educational background might help reduce the punishment. But the courts remained firm. Judges viewed the murders as exceptionally brutal and calculated. The repeated killings, including elderly victims and children, convinced authorities that the crimes fell into the category of the rarest of rare offenses. Eventually, even mercy petitions sent to the President of India were rejected. No pardon came. The fate of the 4 men was sealed. On the morning of 27 November 1983, security was tightened inside Yerwada Central Jail. The 4 convicted killers were prepared for execution. Rajendra Jakkal, Dilip Sutar, Shantaram Kanitkar, and Munawar Shah. All 4 were hanged on the same day. The execution became one of the rare moments in Indian judicial history where 4 educated young men involved in serial killings were executed together. For many people, the event symbolized the final end of the terror that had once gripped Pune. But even after the executions, the fear and psychological impact of the case remained alive for years. The Joshi-Abhyankar murders deeply disturbed India's middle-class society. Until then, many people believed violent criminals mostly came from hardened criminal backgrounds or organized gangs. This case destroyed that assumption. The killers were educated students from respectable environments. They attended college classes, spoke politely, lived among ordinary families. Yet behind that normal appearance existed unimaginable cruelty. Parents across cities became more cautious about whom their children trusted. The idea that even a student sitting beside you in class could hide dangerous intentions became a frightening reality for many people. The case also raised serious discussions about morality, greed, psychological instability, and the misuse of intelligence. Even decades later, the Joshi-Abhyankar case remains one of India's most infamous serial murder cases. The investigation and psychological profile of the killers are still discussed in criminology studies and police training programs, because the case demonstrated how organized violent crime can emerge from unexpected social backgrounds. For law enforcement, it became a lesson in criminal psychology and investigative persistence. For society, it became a warning. Education alone does not guarantee humanity. When greed, arrogance, and emotional emptiness overpower conscience, even ordinary individuals can become capable of horrifying violence. And that is why the story of the Joshi-Abhyankar killings is remembered even today, not just as a crime story, but as a chilling reminder of how darkness can exist behind completely normal faces.